and being able to play alongside LeBron James, arguably the greatest player of all time, the preparation that goes into that, the tutelage of having J.J. Redick as a head coach who understands the importance of shooting, development, the understanding of continuing to be patient with players because it doesn't always start off the way you expect it to. I think all of those things make sense. I think that the Lakers are in a position right now where they need to be patient with him. They need to understand that it takes time to grow and develop. Give him a few years to continue to work alongside some of those great players that they have within their organization, but also some of the coaching staff that they're going to bring in, which will be some ex-players. They've mentioned Rondo. They've mentioned some of those types of players as coming on their staff. So I think the Lakers make the most sense for him because they can be patient with him. They can allow him.
Bronny James just said something that nobody expected him to say. And the moment it came out of his mouth, it changed the entire way you have to look at this father and son story. Because when a young man stands in front of cameras, in front of reporters, in front of the whole basketball world, and quietly but clearly pushes back on the way his own father has been handling things, that is not a small moment. That is a big one. And before we go any further, before we get into all of it, you need to understand one thing first. The name is Bronny James, not LeBron's son, not a legacy project, not a charity draft pick. His name is Bronny James, and everything that has happened between him and his father over the last few months makes a whole lot more sense once you truly understand what those two words mean to him. Bronny has said it himself, clearly, with no apology and no hesitation. His dream has always been to make a name for himself, not ride on someone else's name, not stand in someone else's shadow and smile for the cameras. His dream was always just to put his own name out there, to let the world see him for who he is, not for who he was born to. And that might sound simple when you say it out loud, but when your last name is James and your father is LeBron, making your own name is one of the hardest things in the world to do. And the fact that Bronny has been trying to do it anyway, quietly, patiently, year after year, is the real story that has been hiding behind all the noise. Now let us talk about what actually happened with LeBron and the Lakers coach, because that situation is what brought everything to the surface. LeBron has never been the kind of man who stays quiet when someone he loves is being criticized. That is just who he is. He has always been loud about the things he cares about, and nothing in this world does he care about more than his family. So when criticism started coming in about how Bronny was being used, about his playing time, about decisions being made around him at the Lakers, LeBron did what LeBron does. He spoke up. He pushed.
I agree with you. I do not agree with you if he's going to be inside that locker room. And the reason why is because of the combination of other players who are going to be in the locker room, combined with the media that comes with being in Tinseltown when you're a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. You talk about a distraction. There's no way around that. I'm sure that LeBron James is equipped to handle things. I'm sure that Bronny, who's shown himself to be a spectacular young kid in terms of his just mental makeup, his maturity, his core decency, he's just a wonderful, wonderful kid and impossible to root against based on what you've seen from him. All of those things are true, but you also have to sit back and wonder to some degree what
back. He made his feelings known in a very public, very LeBron kind of way. He confronted people. He got emotional. He defended his son the only way he knows how, which is loudly and without backing down. But here is the thing that makes this situation so layered. Bronny did not ask for any of that. He never once stood up in front of a microphone and said, "Dad, go fight my battles for me." He never once gave LeBron permission to turn his career into a public war. And slowly, in his own way, Bronny started to make it clear that he was uncomfortable with the way LeBron was handling things. Not in an angry way, not in a dramatic way, but in that quiet, calm, unmistakable way that Bronny has about him. The kind of way where you do not need to raise your voice because the words you choose do the work for you. Bronny was basically telling LeBron, this is my story, and I need to be the one who tells it. to really understand where all of this is coming from, you have to go back and understand where LeBron himself came from, because LeBron James did not grow up with a father. He grew up in Akron, Ohio, with his mother, Sandy. His biological father was not in the picture, not at games, not at home, not anywhere. LeBron grew up without anyone cheering for him in the stands the way a father should. He grew up without that support, without that presence, without...
They do not hold back. They do not play it cool. They show up for everything. They are present at every game, every practice, every press conference, every moment they can be there. And LeBron has done exactly that for Bronny since day one. He has been at every game, he has cheered from the sidelines, he has talked about Bronny in interviews with a kind of pride that is genuinely beautiful to see. The love that man has for his son is completely real. It is not for the cameras. It is not a brand strategy. It is just a father who never had anyone fight for him, deciding that his son is going to have someone fighting for him every single day of his life. The problem is that when the father fighting for you is LeBron James, the fighting happens on a stage that most people cannot even imagine. When LeBron shows up at your game, there are cameras. When LeBron talks about you in an interview, there are millions of people watching. When LeBron decides to go to war for you, he does it in front of the entire basketball world. And for a young man who just wants to be seen as himself, having your father fight for you that publicly can actually make your situation harder, not easier, because it keeps reminding everyone of the very thing you were trying to move past, the fact that you are LeBron's son. Bronny James was born on October 6, 2004 in Akron, Ohio, during LeBron's rookie season in the NBA. From the very first day of his life, his existence was already tied to one of the greatest careers in sports history. As he grew up, he moved with his family from Cleveland to Miami, back to Cleveland, then to Los Angeles. He went through multiple schools, he played on multiple teams, and at every single step, cameras followed, articles were written, predictions were made. People were already forming opinions about Bronny James when he was still a kid who had not even started high school yet. He did not choose any of that. He was just a boy who happened to love basketball, growing up inside a spotlight that was never meant for him. And through all of that, through every camera and every take and every headline, Bronny kept doing the same thing. He kept trying to step to the side, just slightly, just far enough to be seen as himself. Not away from his father. He loves his father. That is clear in everything he says. But just far enough sideways to give the world a clean look at who Bronny James actually is, separate from the name. In a pre-NBA draft press conference, a reporter asked Bronny what message he wanted to send to the team executives he was about to meet. What did he want them to know about him? And Bronny said something that, if you really listen to it, tells you everything. He said he is a genuine person. He talked about lessons he learned from both his mother and his father. He gave credit to both of them, graciously, warmly, the way a well-raised young man does. But then, right after that, without missing a beat, he said that he wants to put the Bronny James narrative out there more, instead of just being known as LeBron James's son. Not alongside his father's legacy, not in addition to it, instead of it. That one word, instead, is doing more work than any other word in that entire press conference. He is not trying to be greater than his father. He's not trying to compete with LeBron. He is just asking to be seen as his own person, his own name, his own story. And he has been asking for that in one way or another for years. Now here is where the story takes a turn that puts everything else into perspective. Because in July of 2023, everything that Bronny had been quietly working toward, every dream he had been building toward, came dangerously close to being taken away from him forever. It was a USC basketball practice. Bronny James, just 18 years old at the time, collapsed on the floor. His heart stopped beating.
He went into cardiac arrest, caused by a congenital heart defect that no one knew was there. Not the doctors, not the trainers, not his parents, nobody. The medical staff worked quickly, and they saved his life. He was taken to the hospital, And the basketball world, the same world that had been arguing about nepotism and legacy picks and whether Bronny deserved to be in the league, went completely silent. Think about what that moment was like for LeBron, a man who spent his whole life trying to be the father that nobody was for him, a man who had been at every game, every practice, as present and as involved as any father could possibly be. And in that moment, none of it mattered. None of the fame, none of the rings, none of the records could do anything for his son in that hospital room. For all the power and influence that LeBron James has built over his career, he could not fix what was happening to Bronny. All he could do was wait. And that is a feeling that changes a person. And then months later, Bronny walked back onto a basketball court. When reporters asked him about it at the pre-draft press conference, when they asked if he had genuinely thought his dream might be over, Bronny answered with the kind of honesty that can only come from someone who has actually sat with that possibility. He said it is still lingering. He said his parents were a big part of why he kept believing. And then he said the one thing that defines him more than anything else. He said he still thinks about everything that could happen, but he loves the game so much that the love just overpowers the fear. That is the foundation Bronny James is standing on. Not a family name, not a brand strategy, not a famous last name, just love. His own love for a game he almost lost the right to play. And that is exactly why the tension between him and LeBron became so charged after the health scare. Because LeBron's response was to be even more protective, even more present, even more vocal about defending his son. Which makes complete sense for who LeBron is. He almost lost him. Of course he doubled down on the protection. But Bronny's response to cardiac arrest was to come back and quietly, calmly, make it clear that he wanted to stand on his own. He survived something that could have ended his life, and the lesson he took from it was not to hold on tighter to the safety net. The lesson was to go after the dream harder, on his own terms, in his own way. Watch what happens when they are both in the same press room, sitting side by side, being asked about the experience of Bronny playing in Cleveland. LeBron speaks first. He talks about what it means to him. He talks about watching his son handle the crowd in Cleveland, the city where LeBron himself built his legacy, the arena where fans knew LeBron's name before anyone knew Bronny's. And LeBron gives his son an incredible compliment. He says his sense is that Bronny is better than he would have been in that situation. Coming from LeBron James, that is about as high as a compliment gets. He is comparing his son favorably to himself. That is love in its most genuine form. But then Bronny speaks, and he says something completely different. He says he has just been taught to play the right way his whole life, so he is just going in there and playing his game. His father frames the whole thing as a milestone in a shared story, something they are experiencing together. And Bronny frames it as playing his game. His, not the family's game, not the legacy's game, his game. That one personal pronoun is the whole story in one word. Bronny is not being disrespectful. He is not dismissing his father. He is just quietly, without making it into a big dramatic scene, pointing to himself and saying, "This part belongs to me." And that brings us to the confrontation that became a major talking point in the basketball world. In March, after a Lakers overtime win against the Knicks, LeBron walked directly up to ESPN commentator Stephen A. Smith courtside and started yelling at him. Not a quiet conversation, not a private word. He was yelling, in public, on the record. Stephen A. confirmed the next day that the confrontation was directly about his ongoing criticism of Bronny.
That is enormous. Now let us talk about who Bronny James actually is when you set the basketball aside entirely. Because the conversation has been so locked onto stats and draft slots and playing time that the actual human being in the middle of all of this has barely been looked at. Bronny has been in a steady, private, low-key relationship with Parker Whitfield since their time together at Sierra Canyon High School. Parker is the daughter of actors Sally Richardson Whitfield and Dondre Whitfield. She attended Sierra Canyon, played softball, and is currently studying at Spelman College. In September of 2023, Bronny posted a birthday tribute for her on Instagram. He called her "My Everything." Her father joked publicly that Bronny is on thin ice until he wins a championship, and then immediately made clear that the whole family genuinely likes the kid. Her mother Sally called him simply a good dude. 2 words, a good dude. Not LeBron's son, not the basketball player, just a good person. And then there is something Bronny shared on a podcast that says more about who he is than any stat line or draft grade ever could. He talked openly about his personal values and his decision to remain a virgin. He shared it without any fanfare, without performing it for an audience, without calculating how it would make him look. He just said it because it is true and because it is part of who he is. In a world where young athletes are constantly trying to build a certain image, trying to look a certain way, trying to say the right things for the right audience, Bronny just tells you who he is. No filter, no performance, just the truth. This is who Bronny James is when the camera stopped looking for his father. A young man in a serious relationship, a young man with his own values, a young man who grew up inside the most photographed and most talked about household in professional sports and came out of it with his own identity completely intact. That does not happen by accident. You do not grow up in the orbit of something as big as LeBron James and still come out knowing exactly who you are unless you made a conscious, daily choice to hold on to yourself. Bronny made that choice, and he has been living it every single day. LeBron himself, at a post-game press conference in Cleveland, gave what might be the most accurate description of his son that anyone has ever given. A reporter brought up the fact that Bronny's middle school PE teacher had described him as selfless. Without being asked, without being prompted, just unprompted, this teacher called this kid selfless. And LeBron's response was telling. He acknowledged it with the kind of quiet pride that shows you that word had meaning. And what is striking is that a middle school PE teacher saw it before any of the NBA cameras did. A quiet, unglamorous, deeply human word, selfless. And it stuck. It stuck because it is accurate, because it is real, because it is exactly who Bronny James is when the world stops looking for his father in him. Here is where things stand right now. Reports suggest that if LeBron leaves the Lakers in the offseason, Bronny could be let go from the roster, and the basketball world is treating that like a tragedy, like the end of something. But here's the thing that nobody seems willing to say out loud. It might actually be the best thing that could ever happen for Bronny James. Because the protection LeBron built around his son, the one made completely of love and devotion and a childhood full of absence that he promised himself he would never let his children experience, that protection has also been the thing keeping the world from seeing Bronny clearly. It has been the thing keeping people from evaluating him fairly. It has been the thing keeping Bronny himself from being truly seen on his own terms. If Bronny ends up on a team where LeBron's jersey is not hanging in the arena, where the spotlight is not automatically following him because of who his father is, where a coach chose him because of what he brings to the court and nothing else, that is when the real story starts. That is when the world finally gets to see Bronny James, the basketball player, not Bronny James, LeBron's son. And based on everything he has shown, based on his improving three-point shooting that climbed, Drew Holiday built a championship legacy in Milwaukee as one of the best perimeter defenders in the game. Derek White made himself indispensable in Boston through positioning and basketball intelligence and the ability to make the right play at the right moment. Damon Mitchell extended his career through system fit and the kind of basketball IQ that shows up in wins, not highlight reels. These are real NBA careers, real, respected, well-paid careers built on exactly the kind of player Bronny is becoming. And Bronny knows this. He is not chasing highlights. He is not trying to put up 30 points a night. He is trying to build the kind of game that makes a team better, the kind of game that earns a coach's trust, the kind of game that wins rings. But he also knows he is not there yet. And he will tell you that himself, without any hesitation. He said clearly in front of cameras that he needs to work on his game, that he is working on every part of his game, that when he is in the gym, he is working on everything. There is no ego in that statement. There is no excuse. There is no deflection onto the circumstances or the health scare or the weight of his last name. Just the honest truth from a young man who knows exactly where he is and exactly where he needs to go.
That level of self-awareness is not something that comes from growing up in a famous household. It is something that gets built through being humbled, through falling short, through cardiac arrest and G-League assignments and two-point scoring nights on national television next to your father's all-time scoring record. Through all of it. And through all of it, the one thing that has not changed, the one thing that has been there from the very beginning, is the love for the game. His love, not his father's love, his own love for basketball that he told you about right at the start of this whole story. The basketball world has been watching LeBron James for over 2 decades. It has been watching Bronny James for years too. But it has not been seeing him. Not really. Not yet. Because every time the cameras point at Bronny, they catch LeBron in the frame. Every time someone writes about Bronny, they end up writing about LeBron. Every time someone evaluates Bronny, they do it through the lens of his father. And that is nobody's fault exactly. That is just what happens when you grow up with the name James, and your father is who your father is. But here is what is true. Bronny James is 20 years old. He is improving. His numbers are going in the right direction. His mindset is right. His foundation is solid. His sense of who he is has never cracked under pressure, not even when the pressure was cardiac arrest, not even when the pressure was being drafted onto a team and having the whole world question whether you deserve to be there, not even when your own father was confronting commentators on your behalf in front of millions of people. Through all of it, Bronny has stayed Bronny, clear, calm, grounded, his own person. The most interesting chapter of this story, the chapter that belongs entirely to Bronny and nobody else, the chapter written in his own handwriting with his own name at the top, that chapter has barely even started. The real Bronny James story is not about a confrontation. It is not about leaked conversations or manufactured drama. It is about a young man who grew up inside one of the biggest spotlights in sports history, held on to who he was the entire time, survived something that could have taken everything from him, and came back stronger, more focused, more clear about what he wants and who he is than ever before. Do not count Bronny James out. That is the real story, not the noise around him, not the battles his father fights on his behalf, not the front office drama, or the nepotism takes, or the 2 points per game jokes. The real story is a young man named Bronny James, standing in front of every camera in professional basketball, telling the world exactly who he is. And the world is finally, slowly, starting to listen. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe Bronny James can build a real NBA identity completely on his own terms? And if LeBron